versus this.
That is in a different background when they were testing that whether the basic structure of the constitution can constitute a ground for striking down the legislation or not. In that context, they have delineated these two broad categories.
Yes, Your Lordship.
Laying down the entire ambit of law on the constitutionality of
Your Lordships, but they have referred to
recognized principle, I suppose.
Yes, Your Lordships. Your Lordships, to answer this particular question, when we read the reference which was drawn, the reference was drawn to the state of Andhra Pradesh versus McDowell, where also the same contention was held in 1992 that ideally there are only two grounds for challenging the constitutional validity of the statute. And when we test the statute to the grounds of excessive delegation, prima facie there is no excessive delegation at the hands of the Competition Commission as it is read in accordance with the other provisions of the statute. The Council shall now be going into the merits of the particular sections which were contested to prove that there was no excessive delegation at hand. Much obliged. Your Lordships, when we have a bare reading of the section 14 of the Digital Competition Act, it says that for the purposes of this section, the Commission may specify by regulations the nature of restrictions that may be considered integral to the provision of a core digital service. There is one particular thing which has to be noted in this particular instance, Your Lordships, primarily that the Commission has the power to provide for certain regulations as enabled by the Act itself. Furthermore, these regulations are guided in the form of a guided discretion which is handed to the Commission, and it is not unfettered. And this test of guidance can be read by the very wordings of the provisions of a core digital service which can be found in Schedule 1 of the Digital Competition Act. Your Lordships, when we refer to Schedule 1 of the Digital Competition Act, it establishes 9 grounds as to what amounts to a core digital service.
Let me just stop you right there.
Yes,
I think one of their principal points of challenge is Section 7.3.
Yes,
so maybe you can limit your arguments to 7.3.
Please,
we are not challenging designation of CDS.
Please, Your Lordship. Your Ladyship, for the purposes of Section 7.3, it was stated that the Commission shall specify by regulations separate conduct requirement for each core digital service in relation to the applicable obligations as set out in this chapter. The very reason for separate conduct requirements for each core digital service is because the very nature of each and every core digital service as set out in Schedule 1 of this Act are different. Each core digital service regards to one particular industry or one particular enterprise, and for the purposes of Electramart, it falls under Schedule 1, Paragraph 1, the last point, which is the provision of online intermediation service. If this particular provision was not available under Section 7, Clause 3, every core digital service would have the same amount of requirements which would in fact deem the very provision redundant, as every core digital service has their own set of obligations which have to be satisfied in order for us to further the preamble or the entire purpose of this Act.
What is the purpose of the Act again?
Your Lordship, the Council seeks permission to read the preamble. The preamble of this Act states that an Act to identify SSDs and their associate digital enterprises and to regulate their practices in the provision of core digital services, keeping in view the principles of contestability, fairness and transparency with an objective to foster innovation, promote competition, protect the interest of users of such services in India and for matters connected herewith and incidental thereto.
So Council, with this Act you're setting out a set of rules that any SSD has to comply with.
Yes,
Otherwise, they will be penalized, right?
Yes, Your Lordship.
Those rules, at least description of the rules, seems to be a very integral part of the statute. Why have you not laid those rules out at least in the statute?
Your Ladyship, when we talk about certain provisions which deal